Good morning, News Talk 1330. What a wonderful Tuesday. Pardon any slip-ups. I'm going to account it for a lack of sleep. I'll be absolutely honest. It's good to be on spring break from the University of West Georgia, and I'm still not managing to get enough sleep. My car managed to break down on Sunday on my way to visit a good friend of mine. So that's made for an interesting beginning of the week to have your car break down near Austell. So anyway, good morning. Welcome to the Community Voice program. And there's an interesting quote I would like to read for you. And you'll never guess who made this statement. The fact that we are here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. It is a sign that the U.S. government cannot pay its own bills. It is a sign that we now depend on ongoing financial assistance from foreign countries to finance our government's reckless fiscal policies. Increasing America's debt weakens us domestically and internationally. Leadership means that the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better. Senator Barack H. Obama, March 2006, he made that statement. And it's a wonder that that quote is not advertised in a big way. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure there's a YouTube video even of him making that very statement in some kind of interview on a news channel. It was a pretty simple, straightforward thing. And I'm sure nobody thought anything of it at the time, because that was typical Washington politics, to blame everybody for the spending. Now, what's interesting to me is that the man who made that very statement is the one who goes on to witness something like this. Let me just read you the fiscal year outlays according to the Congressional Budget Office historically. This is U.S. government spending. Fiscal year 2007, Democratic Congress, Republican president. The deficit was $161 billion that year. Fiscal year 2008, Republican president, Democratic Congress. The deficit rose to $459 billion. Fiscal year 2009, Democratic president, Democratic Congress. $1.4 trillion, more than triple the prior year deficit. Fiscal year 2010, $1.3 trillion. Fiscal year 2011, $1.3 trillion. This year it's projected to be another $1.3 trillion. I've also seen sources say it'll be $1.5 trillion this year. Is it just me, or does the president not have a very good record when it comes to deficits? He is the first president to bear a $1 trillion deficit. Not only is he the first one, but he did it 3 years running. Now, I know there's a lot of things that go into that. Falling tax revenue. There's a lot of things he couldn't address at all, much like Ronald Reagan with his deficits in the 1980s. The surging entitlement programs. Nothing you could do about those. A lot of those are automatic spending, and there's no politically feasible way to touch those programs anyway. So there's a lot that goes into it. But it's hard to imagine that just because of some interesting circumstance that the deficit tripled. It's never been done before. It took us 220 some odd years to get the debt that we have. He's not quite doubled it. He's increased it by 50%. The Democratic Congress has doubled it. The Democrats took over in 2007. They had control. 2007, 2008. The last 2 years of the Bush presidency, they took control. When they took control, when they had control of the purse strings, 5 years ago, the debt was right about $8 trillion. It's going to be $16 trillion this year, folks. In 5 years, the absurd $8 trillion, as it was called back then, has doubled. And while it's easy to say that I think people are waking up, I know there's an interesting lens in Carroll County that's an awfully conservative county, too. Generally very politically active, very Republican county. Are people really waking up as much as they should be? I think 2010 was a little indicative of the change in focus, the change in direction of the political climate in the country. Now, there's been almost 2 years now to kind of play off the 2010 election, but it was the largest sweeping change in Congress in 70 years. That's big. Really big. It should have been a big message to the president, and I'm not sure he took it the way he should have. I'm not sure he's changed a whole lot. And I think he will change if he wins re-election. Do you think he's going to be any better or any worse? I know I'm not very funny. I'm not bad at improv, but off the cuff funny I don't do very well. And the president is not a good comedian. There are some terrible, terrible video clips of the president just trying his hardest to be funny. And it's not funny. $15.5 trillion in debt is not funny. Not to mention that most presidents in the last 30 years spent most of their Christmases at Camp David. And every year so far, the president has flown, 5,000 miles, a fifth of the way around the world, for vacation in Hawaii, dragging all sorts of administration officials, Secret Service agents away from their families in Washington, D.C., to spend Christmas in Hawaii, Barack Obama's home state. I saw a list of where presidents spent vacation in the last 30 or 40 years, and some had a couple of elaborate Christmases here and there, but of Bill Clinton, George Bush, Sr. and Jr., Ronald Reagan, 70 or 80% of Clinton, Reagan, both Bushes, the vast majority of Christmases were spent at Camp David. And yet, President Obama has a track record of going to Hawaii every year. Maybe it's just me, but when you're in a tough time in the economy, when unemployment is high, growth is kind of stagnant, those who are employed are part-time employed, and those who are employed are oftentimes people who made pretty good money and now they're waiting tables, though they're considered employed. So income is down. They might be employed, but they aren't making as much money. I think flying your family to Hawaii for Christmas kind of shows that you're out of touch, perhaps, with the American people. I doubt having Christmas vacation in the White House would be very uncomfortable if it were me. Or Camp David, or wherever. Just somewhere that's not so elaborate. I mean, Hawaii just spells expensive vacation. When people hear that, they're like, oh, I want to go to Hawaii. It's a vacation. It's one of those things that people might do once or twice in their lifetimes. And in one of the worst economic recessions in history, the president flies there every Christmas like it's no big deal. And I understand it's his home state. I'm just saying, I don't think it's politically wise. Not in the slightest. Speaking of politically wise, back after the break. We are back. It is 8:41. Plenty of time left in the program. The telephone number 678-601-8255. Again, that telephone number 678-601-8255. I want to cut off the Dropkick Murphys there. But we're going to totally shift gears here on the program, largely because I saw an interesting chart the other day that I'm going to share with you and kind of read off you some of the facts about the TSA. Now, I haven't talked about the TSA in some time. I know I have done a program on the TSA. I'm pretty sure it's on my video channel on YouTube, The Libertarian on YouTube. If you'd like to check out my website, it's not terribly active lately, been awfully busy, but it's libertarian.wordpress.com. Lots of writing on there. You can look at all kinds of philosophical and historical writing about economics. I've got my shows published there as well. And, of course, you can email me at libertariat@gmail.com. What's going on in the world today is absolutely remarkable, and this all has to do with the TSA. We're supposed to go through digitized strip machines, really, at the airport now, so that federal bureaucrats can supposedly detect firearms. Yet the Keystone cops at the TSA in Dallas failed when an undercover agent tested their awareness by hiding a gun in her undergarments. They didn't just fail, they failed every single time. A local news report, actually, from NBCDFW, some small local news place near Dallas. Here's an excerpt from the report. An undercover TSA agent was able to get through the security at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport with a handgun during testing of the enhanced imaging body scanners, according to a high-ranking inside source at the Transportation Security Administration. The source said the undercover agent carried a pistol in her undergarments. When she put the body scanners to the test, the officer successfully made it through the airport's body scanners every time she tried. The source said in this case, where they had a test, and it was a dismal failure, as I'm told, said Larry Wansley, former head of security at American Airlines. As I've heard it, you got a problem, especially with a firearm. Now, this story worries me quite a bit, but not nearly as much as a video I saw on YouTube of a regular person reenacting this very thing. Now, he's not quite so brave as to carry a firearm and try and get through TSA security, so here's what the young man did. Handy with a needle and thread, he stitched a pocket into the side of his shirt, underneath his jacket. Now, the idea here is that if you've ever seen a picture of one of these resonance imaging scanners they use at the airports, when they scan the image, it shows you in kind of a white, kind of ghostly-looking color. It's kind of like an X-ray. And then it's got a black background. Now, anything on you that's metallic or dense shows up as a black space on your person. Well, that's interesting. So the object shows up as black and the background is black too. So what happens when the object is on your side? The scanners only scan you from front and back. They take a picture. This may change since this has come out, but if it's on your side, you can't see it at all. So after hearing rumor that you could hide a firearm on your side, and they make side holsters, the scanner won't pick up the holster, or it will, but it'll blend in with the background, and it's easily missed. So here's what the young man did. He stitched a pocket in the side of his shirt. And what he did was he took a large piece of, I think it was stainless steel of some sort. It was kind of like a little knick-knack of some sort. Probably weighed about half a pound. And he stuck it in that pocket, puts his jacket on, strolls right through TSA in Chicago. He wasn't making this up. I mean, he was sure to video record everything. He had his camera, showed him putting it in the pocket, sticks his jacket on, and walks through the security line, gets through, and the minute he's through, he reaches in, pulls out the big metal thing in the side of his shirt, and says they didn't notice a thing. That could have been a firearm. Does that not bother you at least a little bit? So I found an illustration in my inbox. Very good illustration regarding the TSA. I didn't know that we have spent $60 billion with a B since 9/11 on funding the TSA. $60 billion in the last 11 years. Yet, in that 11-year period, we've had 25,000 security breaches. The TSA spent about $36 million on devices that puff air onto travelers. All 207 of those machines sit in warehouses. I think I even remember reading an article about those air puff machines. I think they were trying to detect explosives. Since 9/11, the TSA's Legion has grown 4 times larger than originally planned. It's grown from 16,500 people to 62,000 people in the administration. 4,000 of those employees at its D.C. headquarters. Why on earth does it even have a D.C. headquarters? 4,000 of those employees have an average salary of $103,000 per year, not including health insurance, benefits, which usually for a federal employee at that salary are about $20,000, $25,000 a year in value. For 9 months of work, one TSA executive received a salary of $5.4 million. What on earth is a law enforcement agency of any sort handing out a salary of $5 million for? a government agency, it would be totally different if there was some private corporation that ran airport security. That would at least make sense. You may not think it's right. You might think it's wrong for a security official, an executive of a security agency, to make that kind of money. But we don't expect our government to have executives like a chief executive officer or a chief operating officer or a CFO and receive salaries like $5.4 million. I cannot believe that. 700 scanners have been installed since 2007. These residence imaging scanners. Each scanner costs $170,000. Well, how many guns have been found? A few guns have been found. Not a single one of them has belonged to a terrorist. The cost, if you just use the machines, the cost per gun found is $6 million. The cost per screening, if you look at the entire cost of the TSA, the cost per screening as passengers walk onto an airplane is nearly $12. The 30 seconds, if you're ran through hastily, it takes you to walk through costs nearly $12. Obama has also proposed a budget that would raise security fees from $2.50 to $7.50 each way. And God help you if you have a one-stop or a two-stop flight. At least 16 individuals later accused of involvement in terrorist plots flew 23 different times through U.S. airports since 2004. Not a single one of them was stopped. Back after the break, we'll talk more about some of the problems the TSA's had in the last 5-6 years. Okay, welcome back. It's 8:52. The telephone number, 678-601-8255. Again, that number is 678-601-8255. And I'm kind of wondering if there's a traveling businessman from Carrollton, for example, or Villa Rica, or anyone in listening range who drives to Atlanta on occasion, maybe once a week, maybe once a month, to fly out of Atlanta on business, who is a little worried hearing these statistics and figures about the TSA. 7 out of every 10 weapons get past screeners. 7 out of every 10. Your probability of dying from a terrorist attack is 1 in 30 million. The probability of getting cancer from a single TSA scan is about 1 in 30 million. Did you know that in 2001, at least prior to September 2001, some knives were allowed on planes? But it was September 2001 that all knives were prohibited. December 2001, shoes must now be removed. December 2004, jackets must be removed. Only passengers allowed past security. I remember that change. I remember we used to be able to walk up to the terminal and watch your family come off the plane. Somehow in 2005, some genius discovered it might be a good idea if we didn't allow lighters on planes. 2006, no liquids. 2008, there was a bomb smuggled on a plane in someone's underwear. March 2010, full body scans became mandatory. Not a few months later, 100 leaked body scan images hit the internet. Innocent passengers. Images were stored when we were told they would not be stored. They would all be deleted after they were viewed. 100 people's naked bodies were leaked onto the internet. In January of 2011, TSA agents steal $40,000 from luggage, sentenced only 5 months in jail. March, the TSA fails to detect box cutters in a passenger's bag. July 2011. 61-year-old woman gropes TSA agent in protest. In May last year, 4 chef knives were brought onto a plane. And there are countless other stories I've heard in the last few years where a woman was amazed that she managed to get from one place to another with her Glock in her purse. She just completely forgot about it. And she didn't want to say anything because she had made it through security the first time, but she thought she might call somebody after she made it through and say, hey, look, I didn't mean to, but I accidentally brought my Glock on the airplane. You might want to let somebody know. A terrorist might be able to do this. But in spite of all the internet coverage, I can guarantee you all of the terrorist organizations are fully aware of the faults of the TSA, yet they've not attacked us. And who knows why? Not my expertise. The TSA averages 900 complaints a month. Over 200 TSA employees have been caught stealing. I'm guessing there might be a few dozen TSA employees at each airport, probably more than that. Well, no, there's 65,000 of them, I said earlier, so there's got to be quite a few more than that. That's a lot of employees. I know we have a lot of airports, but goodness, 65,000 employees? Ron Paul raised $250,000 in 3 days for his campaign to end the TSA and privatize airport security, much like many airports in the world have privatized security. Now, just think for a second. How secure, how safe, how strict do you think airport security is in Israel? If you don't think radical Muslims don't like the United States, wake up. They really don't like Israel. Really don't like Israel. One of the securest airports in the world has a privatized security staff. One thing that's often very interesting is that they profile people, which you could never get away with in the United States because we're so politically correct. It's estimated the United States could save $1 billion by hiring private security for the 35 largest airports. Just those. You could screen 65% more passengers, and it would cost 40% less to taxpayers, it's estimated, under private security. And that's by comparing our airports with other airports around the world, like Israel, who has private airport security. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I don't think anybody is excited about this TSA thing, especially when you hear the numbers. I see people all the time who say, well, look, you know it going onto a plane flight, you know you're safe. You're safer that way. But of course, that's the sheep mentality. That just trust the government, you'll be safer. When you aren't. We've spent $60 billion on the TSA since 9/11. And in that time period, we've had 25,000 security breaches. How much safer are we? Much like any other government program, there's little quirks like this one that I mentioned earlier. Those little machines that puff air onto travelers to try and detect explosives. $36 million we spent on those 207 machines. I'd like to know who got earmarked, which congressman stuck that in a bill. Because all 207 of those machines that cost us $36 million, they don't work, and they now sit in a warehouse somewhere. The TSA has grown from 16,500 people to 62,000 people. One executive got paid for 9 months of work $5.4 million. But it's not in the news. The only place you can get it is right here. The only place you can get it is weird news mediums like this. Some 23-year-old college kid who does this stuff for a living. Libertariat@gmail.com is the email. Appreciate the feedback. Libertariat.wordpress.com is the website. Have a wonderful Tuesday.